Hello and welcome to the Home Assistant Podcast. This is episode 68. We're talking about 0.111, Belkin, automatic, and we're talking to Nathan. Hey Nathan, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good, thanks. And as usual, we have Phil. Hey Phil.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
This episode is sponsored by Home Assistant Cloud by Nabu Casa. Easily and securely access your local Home Assistant instance remotely for a small monthly fee that also supports the Home Assistant project. Configuration is via the user interface, so no fiddling with router settings, SSL certificates, or YAML.
So right off the bat, we have our May the Cloud Strike Again piece. So continuation from last time, Belkin, there was a bit of controversy around what Belkin was doing with Wemo and such, and now it's basically confirmed that Belkin will need users to get cloud accounts for them to continue using Wemo devices. So they're giving a little bit of a transition period, but at the same time, eventually folks like myself will need to get a Wemo account. And a big part of that means you need internet, so on and so forth. So it's again, it's not the worst thing, but at the same time, really, it starts to affect you now because now this, again, gives them more ability to kill more devices. And this only happened a couple of days after we found out about Belkin trashing their cameras. So,
I mean, I like how you've taken the diplomatic approach there and said, I mean, it's not the worst thing, but I mean, let's put it into context. Like last episode.
Well, relative to what they did the week before, yeah.
Well, I mean, now they're forcing existing users with their local control to now require the cloud.
Yeah, exactly.
And now they've got a track record of just forcing people with devices to basically brick them remotely.
Right, exactly. So I know for myself, I'll kind of slowly start to look for other devices as well because again, I don't see them keeping some of my Wemo switches are some of their first generation ones. So those are pretty old and I have a feeling they'll want to kill those off. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, preemptively, I'll probably start looking for another brand to move to.
So I think the upshot of it is for Home Assistant users is that if you are prompted to log in with a Wemo account, don't do it. Once you set your Wemo device to be linked with a Wemo account, you will lose all local control. So, and they've even got it on their website, you know, in their frequently asked questions. A Wemo account requires an active internet connection to function. As soon as your Wemo devices are linked with a Wemo account, you will only be able to control them on a network with an active internet connection, which is also going to add latency. You know, if you're using an app in the same network, you're going to have to dial out to wherever, you know, US, Europe, some AWS server somewhere, then back into your home just to turn a lamp on and off. Yeah,
exactly. And you know, even that's okay. Again, for me personally, I'm more worried about losing my devices. Not that the latency isn't an issue. It's definitely an issue, but having no device is a bigger issue, right? So I'm gonna not update my account, see how long I can push that off for. I don't even actually have the Wemo app installed on my phone.
Nice.
So outside of that, I think I'm gonna hold off and I'm gonna see how long I can keep this going so that, you know, I don't have to buy a new one. But you know, reality is I might actually have to still do that. So we'll see how long that goes.
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah.
And one that we missed last week, we had a really big episode last week with the huge Home Assistant release, and we didn't get time to put this one in, but Automatic is telling everyone to throw away their car trackers. So Automatic is a little device that you can plug into your car's, I think it's OBD2 or something like that. It's one of those diagnostic ports that your mechanic will use. You plug that device in and it will then use your phone's data connection to report the location of your vehicle, give you some insights, you know, what error codes is going on in your car, what's your fuel economy, and, you know, your distance you're traveling and all that. Well, because we're in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic at the moment, COVID-19, they've just basically said, look, just like many other companies in the United States, you know, the pandemic has adversely impacted our business, and with fewer people purchasing, we can't afford to keep our cloud services alive. So we ask that you please discard your adapter by following standard electric recycling procedures. You do not need to send your adapter back to Automatic because they don't want to have to throw it away themselves, I guess.
Yeah, which makes sense.
And to add insult to injury, rub salt right in there, they've also said, we don't have any plans to open source our assets.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Automatic, for that.
Yeah. So I'm kind of glad that. So I was actually looking at getting these a while ago, and then I was like, I'm not a huge fan of putting my location and tracking my location on this. At least, and not that that's Google, Apple. Those are kind of unavoidable. Smaller companies, I also don't know really what they're doing, where they're going. So I decided against it, but. I'm kind of glad that I didn't do that, but for whoever did, that's really unfortunate. And yeah, it's too bad that they're not planning to open source anything. If
people still want to use a car tracker, there is an integration, and the name, I can't remember right now, but there is an integration in Home Assistant that allows you, I think there's some software or a service out there that allows you to run your own instance of a car tracking service. So you basically put the port you put the device into your car, and then you configure it to communicate with this service upstream, and it can be your own local instance, I believe, or it can be you can pay for someone to host it for you, and then you can get the data into Home Assistant pretty much the same as Automatic did, but without relying on them in their cloud.
Right.
And I believe it's a range of devices that can be used.
So there's some options out there.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so on to the new release, 0.111.
Nice number again.
I know, right? So from a new features perspective, so now the UI loads before other components. So if you frequently restart your Home Assistant or just restart it in general, one of the last things typically to reload, if you notice, is the Lovelace UI, which has now kind of been flipped around, and now it's one of the first things that's been and that now loads, which is great. So then at least hey, my instance is back up without necessarily having to look at the logs and such. I do think Home Assistant's gotten a little bit faster, so it hasn't been as much of an issue, at least for me, that I've noticed. But I definitely appreciate that one.
Yeah, it's a bit jarring when you load up Home Assistant and everything is sort of unavailable, like entity gone. Like, oh crap, what's gone? But now that we've got safe mode, that things haven't broken. So yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I think this is a good feature.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and entities will be in an unknown state until everything's loaded. But I'll take that. Yeah. Right. So at least it's a good indication of Home Assistant's back up and go on from there.
And Rohan, I'm really pleased that this isn't such a big release, so I'll just skip over the next two quickly, but because there's nothing really that we can discuss more about it. But Open Z-Wave Beta, which we talked about last week, which was using, I think, under the hood Z-Wave to MQTT in their device API with Home Assistant. That's now added support for climate fans and locks. So if you're using that beta with your Z-Wave network, you can now add those devices, which is pretty good. And Insteon has also added support for climate devices too. So yeah, great to see more additions coming up to long time integrations with Home Assistant.
Yeah, for sure.
And especially not cloud-based ones.
Exactly. It'll help people transition over from Wemo and such. So some noteworthy updates. Automations now mark as triggered pretty much immediately. So especially when you care about the last triggered time and such, this makes a difference. Before, it would kind of it'd be marked as it's triggered once the action is done. So the difference is, especially if you have a large automation, this might actually make a big difference where, it might be a minute to run the whole automation or maybe longer. So now it kind of gets marked right when the automation runs, whether you click it manually or the automation gets run automatically, and then instead of it being triggered at the end. So
I had no idea that was the case. I just assumed once it got triggered, that was it. I thought maybe they happened in parallel, but I think that's interesting because I use a lot in templates. I want to make sure that an automation doesn't get triggered too many times. I might have multiple triggers against an automation, but I don't want that automation to fire every time one of those triggers hits. I might have a time trigger, a motion trigger. So yeah, that's especially if you're using delays in your automations or script service calls. Yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah.
More integrations moving along over to the UI. Now it's Plex, June HD, OpenUV, they are Belkin air conditioners. They've all gone over to the UI. So start moving them out of your YAML. I don't think any of them will cause issues if they're still in YAML. And as you reboot into the new version of Home Assistant, the UI will populate them from the YAML. But moving forward, it might be time to getting rid of them out of your YAML.
If you use Slack as your notification platform, there's now a template support for Slack blocks. So what that means is you can have essentially blockified elements coming into Slack. So you can have images, formatted text, and so on. So essentially, that now supports Home Assistant templates. So you can kind of change the content of those blocks based on your templates as well. Mm-hmm. So that's actually kind of a really neat ability. And
now this is something I've perused in the release notes, and it's one of those line items that go, oh. What is that feature? I want to do a bit more investigation. And so the upshot of it is that the Amazon Echo adds more support for doorbell events. And I thought, okay, I need to take a further look into this. So from my understanding is that now if you have your Amazon Echo linked with Home Assistant, that you can now have a binary sensor exposed to the Amazon Echo. And when you sync device entities back to the Amazon Echo, you could have one of those binary sensors come in to the app as a doorbell. And then you can have, for example, maybe you've got an input Boolean in Home Assistant. When that goes on, the Amazon Echo will see that as a doorbell being dinged. And then the little lady inside your Amazon Echo can then announce, hey, there is someone that has just rang this doorbell. Now, that's what my understanding of the feature is. Unfortunately, the Home Assistant documentation around this was a bit lacking, and I did have some issues with the beta this week in my testing, so I wasn't able to fully try and test this out. I am hoping I've got this feature correct. There is a whole bunch of device classes that the Amazon Echo integration supports, and I believe I've read the documentation correctly, and that's what it can do. So this might be cool. I know, for example, Rohan, I think you've got Ring as well, the doorbell.
Yep.
I have one, and it obviously Ring is an Amazon company, so it integrates very nicely with the Echo
natively. Yeah.
And when there is a doorbell event, I have that little lady everywhere in the house. Someone is at the front door.
Yeah.
If this could be a great way for you to have that feature on, maybe you've got a custom integration with your own doorbell. Maybe you're just using a little smart. Maybe you're using one of those dash buttons that Amazon used to sell as a doorbell. They have the same feature. So I hope I've got that correct. I apologize if I have not understood that release note. I've tried to do my research on it, but I haven't fully tested it yet. But if that is the case, and what I've described is true, that will be awesome for a lot of people that are using third-party doorbell notification or third-party doorbell devices and integrations with Home Assistant that want that little lady in that Echo device to announce when there is someone at the front door.
It is it is a good feature that they have, but I'm glad that they kind of opened it up now as more of another entity, essentially.
Can I just say to everyone listening, that was extremely hard not to say her name describing that feature.
I've got to say, I think I've gotten decent at not saying the name and saying Echo, and that's why I like pause and it's like Echo Show rather than saying the name and triggering everybody's Amazon Echoes. So hopefully your Echo doesn't respond to Echo. I'm sorry, can't help you there. All right, let's talk about some breaking changes. Wunderlist, Automatic, GearBest, and Worldwide Lightning Location Network have been removed. So those sensors are no longer supported. And the GearBest sensor, especially, that was a scraping sensor, and Home Assistant itself doesn't support scrapes anymore, just because it's not a very scalable way. And we've talked about that for a few episodes. So, but this is it was kind of a long time coming for that. I'm not sure about Wunderlist and Worldwide Lightning Location Network. Why those are gone, but I'm assuming something similar, or I don't think Wunderlist shut down, but whatever.
Guessing their
reason.
API has just been more restricted, and that worldwide Lightning location network, they just shut off their API. Catch you later.
Yeah,
it's nice of them.
Well, it's one way to do it. So great.
So we mentioned before, Insteon now supports climate devices. There are major changes. So the library which is used for the Insteon integration has been changed. So a library that Home Assistant uses to communicate with Insteon under the hood, so they can go in and have someone else has written the feature. Basically, Home Assistant has just plugged that out and changed it with someone else's integration, and it could result in some breaking changes and also some improvements for you. So be sure to check the release notes before upgrading, because there is some notes around specific devices and all that if you are an Insteon user. And of course, there are other breaking changes in this release. These are just the two that we thought were pretty important.
Yeah.
Sorry, before we move on to Nathan, can I have a bit of a rant, Rohan, just for 1 sec?
You absolutely can.
And that is, and it is about Home Assistant, just because, as I mentioned to you offline, Rohan, last week I lost internet for 24 hours. Not a big deal. I've had worse.
Mm-hmm.
And in that time, I had to spin up an instance of Home Assistant to run only local things, remove all my cloud connections, basically, because I was having a lot of internal network issues as well.
Right.
And as part of setting up Home Assistant, I thought I'll just copy over the storage folder and be done with it, all right? And it wasn't that easy. There was permission issues. I'm running Home Assistant in a Docker container. But one that really got me, and so I eventually said, that's it. I'm just going to set up a Home Assistant instance from scratch without internet. And one thing that really got me, and I thought was a bit of an oversight, was that without the internet, it's very hard to go through the user setup process in Home Assistant, because now Home Assistant asks you to select your location. But in order to select your location, you have to move a Google map. And of course, without internet, you can't get any map. And so I couldn't set my latitude and longitude in Home Assistant through the UI without an internet connection. And I thought, that's very frustrating. And I know a lot of people are now, like, with YAML being deprecated for user interface, I thought it's a valid case where I know I can easily Google on my phone what my latitude and longitude is. Like, let me put it in somewhere, either put it in through the UI or allow me to upload it through YAML, which I believe I can do still. But I thought that just really grinded me for that week. I thought that's a pain in the bum.
Interesting. I would have thought I haven't done a fresh Home Assistant install in a while, and hopefully I won't have to for a while. But it's interesting that there's no skip option or anything like that. So that's
yeah. I think I eventually just whatever the default was, which I think comes out as like somewhere in Europe. I just said, yeah, that's fine, whatever. Which obviously then affects my sunrise and sunset times. And throws all that off and all that. So it was a bit of obviously got around it eventually, but I thought that's my pain point for this week. That's my grumpy fill for this week.
That's fair. That's fair.
Is there no manual input for the map? I thought there was like 2 numbers you could enter for.
I couldn't see it on the UI. Maybe it's been removed, or maybe that's been recently added. In that screen I couldn't see it, and maybe my frustration of that map just being grey, I skipped over it, which could also be possible, and then I look like a fool, which, fair enough, I'm happy to be. Because like Rohan, I haven't done a fresh install of Home Assistant in quite some time. I've had my in secret files and in YAML for quite some time, so I didn't see any input for me to manually select it. But even then, like, dragging a map to put in your location, it does seem a very poor way of doing that from a user interface perspective, because even if you have internet, you're going to have to drag that pin over your exact location and find it. For example, you'll have to find in Canada on the map and then zoom in to where you are exactly in Canada.
So you can't even type like Toronto, Canada or something like that?
Not that I'm aware of. Well, especially if you don't have internet.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing it would be cool if they could somehow use the Google Maps geocode API, for example, so you can type in an address and then it will spit back from that API what the latitude and longitude are of that address, which would make more sense. I do have a feeling it's not as easy as that, though, because Google are now charging for the Google Maps API, so you might not be able to ship an API key with your open source software and all that. So I can see the reasons from a technical perspective.
Yeah. I thought a while ago they switched to, what is it, OpenStreetMap, was it? From Google Maps?
That's from the Google Map, yeah. And maybe that's also true. Maybe that map that I was seeing wasn't a Google Map, it was an OpenStreetMap as well. But once again, no internet, it was just grey. It was a grey box for me.
Yeah. Because for some, I could have sworn that's what, but maybe they're using both components. I'm not sure. Again, like I said, I haven't done a fresh install in a while, but yeah, I'm sure we'll find out soon enough on what
and all
what's
those
going on there,
pretty icons for the integrations. They're all hosted in the cloud, which makes sense. I don't want to have 10,000 icons in my Docker image for something that I'm not going to use. I can understand that, but yeah, that obviously also caused some quirks in the UI as well. Interesting.
So like I'm, for me, if I'm adding a device on a Home Assistant instance that doesn't have internet, I'm okay with not getting the like Plex logo or Google logo or whatever, right? But at the same time, you're saying like the UI itself just gets a little messy. Is that?
Well, because the icons are such now an important part of that UI.
Yeah.
You sort of get just broken image, like it's a wall of broken images and then titles, if that makes sense.
Right.
And I must, clarify this. This is very much an edge case. A lot of people that are installing Home Assistant will have an active internet connection. I think it does highlight, though, that there is still a sort of a reliance on Home Assistant having a cloud as well. I know a lot of it's hosted in GitHub and all that, so it's not going anywhere and can be easily reproducible.
Yeah.
But if someone does want to run Home Assistant on a remote cabin in the woods, or an RV that doesn't have internet all the time, or even a boat, as we know is being used on.
Yeah.
It does, there are some considerations, and obviously very, very minor case, but important to highlight as well.
Yep. Makes sense. All right. So Nathan, it's time for you to shine. You know what? Let's start off. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm from Vancouver, beautiful British Columbia, Canada.
Nice.
Of course. I've been using Home Assistant for a little more than a year now. Started around 0.86, I think.
Okay.
Back then I had absolutely zero knowledge about any sort of these technical stuff, I guess. And all I knew is you get a smart device, you install an app, and then you pair it, and then it's voila, you just control it with your phone. So Home Assistant was... Yeah, Home Assistant, I initially thought it was just an app that could connect everything together. And I didn't know you had to install anything or anything. But the documentation is just very great. And after much reading and stuff, I was able to get it installed, which was just woof.
Yeah, fair enough.
So I want to just address one elephant in the room, if we can, please. And how old are you, Nathan?
I am 14.
Right. So way to put us all to shame. So you're 14 years old. Rohan, what were you? How much of the house had you automated when you were 14?
Not a whole lot. I think I had some X10 stuff, but that's it.
That's true. That will be about
Yeah. Oh man, now I feel old.
I know.
Yeah.
So you're spinning up Docker images and doing all this crazy stuff at 14, and obviously teaching yourself how Home Assistant works based on the documentation. So that's awesome. And I just want to say, because people probably won't recognize you from your voice, but Rohan, you can back me up on this. So for the past couple of weeks, about a week and a half or so, you emailed us back in March, and I thought, yep, add you to the list. There you go. You're on. We'll interview you. And so the past week, I've been really excited. I've been redoing. I was on Reddit, and I saw this Reddit thread come up. My take on the Lovelace UI, and it was a really awesome looking user interface of Lovelace. And I thought, that's what I'm going to do. And I went into the GitHub repo, copied all the code. Rohan, I've been showing you what I've been working on. I've been really pleased with myself, to be honest, taking credit from this other person's GitHub repo. And then last week you said, oh, by the way, here's my repo, take a look. And sure enough, you are the person that has created one of the best Lovelace and unique Lovelace takes I've seen, which is the clear UI. So I just want to say thank you very much for sharing your code. I've been all over your repo and I've been loving it. And I'm guessing it had a lot of upvotes as well. So I know there's a lot of people that saw your user interface and have been taking inspiration from it as well. So awesome work there.
Thank you. Yeah. Just to clarify, it's actually called the soft UI, not clear.
The soft UI. Nice.
Yes.
Oh, see, I can't even get the name right. Like what?
So no, and it's awesome. So I checked it out a while ago as well, and pretty much around the same time. I think Phil and I were chatting about it. I don't know, one of us sent. I think maybe I sent it to you or you sent it, whatever. And we were like, wow, this is such a beautiful UI. Like if I could ask for a UI in Home Assistant that wasn't the Lovelace UI, I think this would be it, right? Like that natively. I just think it's very, very pleasant and very well done. So great job right off the bat, Nathan.
Thank you.
You talked about kind of, you how you got into Home Assistant or why you got into Home Assistant. What are you doing with it? What are some of the things that you've done?
So initially, I got it for the sole reason of just integrating stuff into HomeKit. We got some cheap Tuya plugs, and I thought it would be cool to like have it inside the Home app. That's why I looked into it, and
sure.
We got a Pi to run Homebridge actually, but the JSON files and the keys wasn't very really easily to configure. But with Home Assistant, all you need to do is just the account and the password. And even with the last release, Tuya is configurable with the UI now. Yeah. So it's just so much easier, and I was just blown away. So now we have obviously more devices, and our automations, I like to think, are divided into kind of three parts. So there's our motion detection and buttons and all the other stuff.
Okay, so that's pretty cool.
But what's driving your automations? So are you using Home Assistant to drive the automations, or are you doing all the automations based in the Home app, like to do the rules there?
It's all in Home Assistant now.
Nice.
I initially used a Home app for a bit, but it was just very limited, and of course Home Assistant can do so much more than that.
Yeah.
So how do you primarily interact with it? So do you use the Home Assistant UI? Do you use the Home UI? Do you use like a smart speaker or something like that? What do you do?
For a while we used the Home app, but we now have like 2 tablets on the wall for controls. We sometimes use them, but most often we just use the buttons around, which is quite convenient.
Yeah.
We have one taped under the kitchen island, and so it's very useful. You don't have to walk all the way to the light switch to toggle the lights right above you. So you just press the button under, which is nice.
What are these buttons? Are they like a HomeKit specific button, or?
Oh, these are all Xiaomi buttons using Zigbee. Nice.
Okay.
Oh, nice. Yes, I have a few of those. I really love those buttons. They for something so cheap, they look so premium. And they act like it's a nice big toggle button, and you can also get the double ones. Yeah, really impressed with those Xiaomi buttons.
We use a lot of Xiaomi sensors. I think we have around 40, and they're all like really not that expensive. We have the smoke detectors and also the motion detectors and the door sensors.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay, so that's a pretty decent kit.
And they're all Xiaomi?
Yes. Initially, we started using the gateway, but there was some sort of problem with if Home Assistant was running in a VM or in a Docker, and the sensors just would not update randomly.
Right.
So we got a combi stick. I started using decons, but as soon as I restarted, all the devices just unpaired for some reason. I tried repairing them, but as soon as I would restart, the devices would not pair with the stick. So now we're using ZHA, and it's been working well since.
That's interesting. Were you running decons in a Docker container?
It's It's running as an add-on in Haseo or Home Assistant.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, which would be a Docker container as well. That's interesting. Because I know I use decons with my Xiaomi stuff, and I have one door sensor that sometimes doesn't update, and annoyingly it's in my wardrobe, which is where I want it to update. I'll open the wardrobe and the lights won't turn on, which is quite frustrating, but that's the only one that really I've had issues with.
Yeah. You have to manually turn those lights on.
No, I just have to shut the door and open it again, to be honest.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's even funnier. But that is definitely a first world problem if I've heard one.
Yeah. So Nathan, you've done a quite a bit, and you've shared a lot of stuff that you've worked on yourself. As I said, I really want to give you credit here. For someone so young, you've shared a lot of the stuff you've worked on and really given back to the communities. And some of the stuff is really amazing. Like, can you tell me your smart bed sensor? Like, where did you get the idea to do that, and how did you do it?
I actually saw it on the forums. It was someone else's idea. It was using the capacitance pins on the ESP32, and then you make a kind of a capacitor that would change based on the pressure above. So you put that under your mattress, and if you go on it, it would just change. And using the change, you can calculate if someone's on the bed or not. So you don't need anything else except for ESP32.
That's amazing.
Wow, that's awesome.
And are you like soldering or connecting all this yourself?
Yes, pretty much. My dad helps me sometimes.
Yeah, but that's awesome. I mean, I'm too scared to touch a soldering iron myself.
Yeah. No, that's great. And these are really good skills to have too. So just, again, like Phil said, it's great that you're doing this kind of stuff at such a young age too.
Yeah, Home Assistant's just very interesting to me, of course.
Yeah. So what are some of your favorite automations? What are some of your favorite things that you've created?
Yeah, my favorite automation is probably my alarm clock. So I actually have a Xiaomi Fitness Band. So with like linking and stuff, Home Assistant is actually able to tell when exactly I've fallen asleep. And so scientifically, it has been proven that someone is more likely to wake up after they've slept for a full sleep cycle, which is 1.5 hours. So I have like 2 inputs in Home Assistant that it's like 2 times you have to give that it's got to stay 1.5 hours apart. So basically, because Home Assistant knows when exactly you have fallen asleep, Home Assistant rings the alarm exactly at when you have finished the sleep cycle inside the 2 times you have given it.
Interesting. Okay.
So that's theoretically the most easy time for you to wake up inside the 2 times you have given.
So if you had to wake up, as an example, if you had to wake up at 7:30 a.m., you'd put it from anywhere from 6 a.m. to 7:30 and anywhere in that hour and a half time frame.
Yeah. So say if you fall asleep at 5, it would wake you up at 6:30 because that is 1 full sleep cycle. So it's for you to most easily wake up.
Nice.
Wow.
Well, that's all right. So it uses the band obviously to measure when you went to sleep, when you actually went to sleep, rather than when you like hit the bed kind of thing. Yeah. Wow, that's cool.
And also after the alarm clock rings, it first plays like calming music for 5 minutes, and then the radio starts playing. I have a super old radio plugged into a smart plug, and as soon as I turn the radio off, it calculated when the radio started playing to when I turned it off, and tells me how long I've been in bed since I turned the video off. So kind of tells me how long it took for me to wake up.
Yeah.
And then it does the morning briefing with the speaker, and also the door opens for me to go.
Wow. How are you opening the door?
It's basically a motor with 2 wheels attached to a door. It's kind of, imagine it as like half of an RC car, cut and stick it on the door. Then when it turns, it just drags the door open and then pushes the door closed.
That's awesome.
That is amazing.
You're basically living in the Jetsons era at this point. That's pretty great. What? So that's all of this stuff is done through automations and stuff. So obviously, like the wake up and all of that stuff has to be, but even the door opening, all of that is are you triggering that, or is that also automatic, or what's happening?
The door, the motor is connected to a ESP8266, and it's inside ESP Home, so it's all in Home Assistant.
Nice.
That is one of the coolest things I'm just imagining this like really aggressive looking door with wheels on the bottom that can just open and close itself.
Yeah, that's actually really. I don't think I've heard that use case. I know there's people that have like pistons attached and doing all this stuff, but I honestly I love it just because it's so simple. Right? Just how are you when it closes? Does the door shut all the way, and or how are you getting around the doorknob or whatever?
Yeah, I actually stuck a piece of tape so it doesn't latch when it closes. Yeah, or you could just leave it as is. It won't close fully, but
yeah. So and then I'm assuming afterwards when you go to bed, if you say goodnight or something like that, does it close the door as well, or is it just an opening?
I have a button on the bed, so when I press it for 2 times, and the door just closes, and I just go to bed.
That's awesome.
When Nathan's done with his parents, he goes, "I'm done with you." Taps his button twice, and the door just slowly closes on the person reading his door. Yeah. And the ultimate mic drop.
Yeah, that would make arguments with parents so much better.
Yeah, that's what I do sometimes.
You should have a slam button so the motor just runs faster and goes smack. That's the I'm really angry button.
If you make me take the trash out this week, I'm going to make you not be able to turn the lights on for a month.
Yeah, exactly. That's funny.
So you've obviously got other people living in your house with you. So you've got parents and stuff. Whose idea was it? Because you mentioned before that you've got buttons in the kitchen. Is it there? Are they asking you are you giving them the ideas to do these automations, or is it something that's is it a whole family affair? How can we automate the house, or is it just you driving this?
So at first it was kind of my dad's idea. He's like, "Oh, smart switches, very cool." And then I kind of took over after I saw how cool it was. So it's basically just me doing all the automations now.
Nice.
That's awesome. Good for you.
And how do you come up with the ideas for the automations? Is there a problem you see yourself and you go, I see, maybe you've got a brother or sister, they're doing it this way. I can automate it that, or, mum has to do this in the morning. I can automate that part of her routine. What's in your mind that makes you add to an automation or come up with an automation idea?
Just basically, I used to have this sheet that I write everything everyone does from the start of the day to the end of the day. What lights do they turn on and which time? But yeah, that wasn't very helpful. So I kind of just look around, and if there's anything I can kind of help, I would help.
That's awesome.
Nice. I'm sure your parents appreciate that too. So make their lives easier. So let me ask you this. So I know you mentioned you have the Xiaomi Band, and are you using that for any sort of presence, or are you doing presence in any other way to say, hey, I'm home, or I'm not home, or mom, dad are home, whatever?
I've actually found this very, very helpful custom component on Hacks. It's called iPhone Detect. So I think basically what it does is pings your iPhone, and even in deep sleep, your iPhone can respond. So that's how we basically track our presence, since everyone in our family uses an iPhone.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that's been working great. That's been working better than the app and the other Bluetooth tracking and stuff.
Yeah, that's
okay.
Cool.
No, that's great.
So are you using the voice control? Would that be... I was just going to say, is it Siri that you're using for voice control, or do you not use voice control in your house?
We do use it sometimes. We also have one sorry.
Oh, no.
One Echo. One Echo.
Yeah.
Yeah, we use the Echo sometimes, but most often we just use the buttons around.
Okay.
Which is interesting. So I know I've started putting a few buttons around the house as manual overrides, and my wife made the comment of, you've made the house so smart that you're now just putting switches around to automate
Buttons to make it
the
dumb.
buttons that we could have just had on the wall originally. Like, is that what we're doing now?
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, so a big part is triggered by motion detectors, but also sometimes you just don't know when you want to turn a light on. But in those situations, just kind of have buttons around, so it's easier than just saying stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Are you, so you mentioned you have a couple of tablets around. Assumably that's why you designed that UI, is so that they can go on the tablets. It looks nice. And was that the idea, or
Yeah,
you just do it anyways? Cause why not?
that was definitely the idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. And so how often do you interact with that kind of stuff with tablets? Like, because you said mostly you and your family use the buttons just to kind of override, or hey, turn on the light above my head, press the button there, kind of thing. How often are you guys using one medium versus the other? Whether it's voice, or whether that's using the Home Assistant UI or Home UI or buttons or tablet. Like how do you guys?
So mainly all the lights again are triggered by motion. But say if you're sitting on the couch and you want to turn off the lamp, there's just a button beside. So we would just often just use the button. But say if you're standing in the middle of a hallway and you want to turn some lights off, then you could use your phone.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's kind of handy.
So you're doing a lot of hardware stuff, and you're using your ESP32s and 826s a lot. Do you have, and you're obviously doing some coding as well with your soft UI, with your CSS. I know you're obviously still in school, so do you have any like classes or anything in school that are helping you like learn these skills to be able to do it, or is this just all come out of you just being stuck in isolation and being and wanting to do a hobby at home? Like,
there's not really any classes that's helping with Home Assistant, but I am trying to learn some Python so I can maybe help contribute something.
Nice.
Awesome.
That'll be really cool.
Well, I mean, you're doing a fantastic job, and I know, like, I've been watching some TV shows because it's obviously been a long time since I've been in school, and now, a lot of schools are offering sort of robotics classes and hardware and software sort of things. So I think if you're doing this stuff already by yourself, then, and if you enjoy it, there's definitely, when you get out of school, like a lot of, like the skills you're learning here are going to be very much relevant in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Good for you. I'm really happy to see that you're doing all these cool things and giving back to the community too, right? Like again, your soft UIs on GitHub, and do you have any other projects on there? I'm just opening it now, but yeah. So it's just your soft UI. So yeah, it's nice to see that at least you're giving back to the community, and again, this is a great way to start, I think, and again, very impressive. So
yeah, thank you.
And all the unique use cases and that you're using for, like, you're using contact sensors to monitor the status of a door lock, or, you're got a chair sensor using just the contact sensor. Like, there's like really cool use cases, and sharing them back with everyone is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Home Assistant is obviously very, very awesome, but I think more importantly is just the community around Home Assistant. And of course, there's a podcast about it. That's pretty awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, just big thank you to everyone listening, and of course, you too.
Yeah, and thank you for contributing and making some really cool things. So
and making the time to come on and share it with everyone on the podcast today too. Like, we wouldn't be here without people that are willing to share their stuff. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on today and all the work you're doing. And I can't wait to see what you do when you've got your own house and you've just got like free reign.
Yes, I'm very glad to be on the podcast. Thank you.
Are your friends jealous of like how cool you've automated your house? Just as a off the cuff question.
Yeah, I've taken some videos and sent to them, and they're like, oh.
Yeah.
They all think it's very, very interesting.
That's awesome.
wicked. See, more than anything else, it's that kind of shiny things that you can do that, it's like everybody's like, oh man, that's really cool. That's where the fun, like icing on the cake stuff is, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm glad you're having fun with that.
Awesome. Well, Nathan, thank you so much for coming on today, and good luck with everything you do, and keep updating that soft UI because I am really enjoying it.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Cheers. If you want to share your Home Assistant journey or come on as a guest, reach out to us at feedback@hasspodcast.io. That's HASS podcast.io.
The Home Assistant podcast is hosted by Phil Hawthorne and myself, Rohan Karamandi. For links to topics that we discussed today, check out our show notes on hasspodcast.io.